Shabbat Shalom. Jews have proudly served in many of the wars fought by Canada, both before and after Confederation. 4,000 Canadian Jews enlisted in the various armed branches of the Canadian forces in the First World War. Over 100 of them were killed, many received wounds, and 84 of them were decorated for bravery and meritorious service. It is neither commonly known or appreciated that during the Second World War, out of a total population of Jewish Canadians numbering some 167,000 men, women, and children, over 18,000 served in one or more of the branches of the Canadian Armed Forces. Of that number, 423 sacrificed their lives. This, no doubt, is one of the greatest per capita contributions of any ethnic or religious group of Canada. And on this Shabbat, before Remembrance Day, we remember the 23 members of Holy Blossom Temple who fell in World War I or World War II in service to their country and fighting tyranny everywhere. They are John Alfred Benjamin, Sidney Brown, Zave Brown, Leonard Cohen, Meyer T. Cohen, M. Kenneth Emsig, David J. Freifelt, Albert Glazer, Fred B. Harris, Theodore Herman, Daniel L. Jacobs, Julius Kramer, George Meltz, Howard Mitchell, Lambert Nussbaum, David Raitblatt, brothers Lionel Rohr and Martin Rohr, Arthur Rotenberg, Cecil Samuel, William Schwartz, Henry B. Siegel, and Lou Warren Summers. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for blessing. As Remembrance Day approaches, we remember a time, we long for a time, when there was such clear clarity of right and wrong, clarity of mission and shared mission, clarity of what is just and what is tyranny, clarity in knowing our role, knowing what to do, knowing what is right in the eyes of our neighbors and in the eyes of God. In a recent correspondence with our past president, Elliot Jacobson, I learned about a cousin of his, someone that he's learning more about through research. Elliot writes, "My middle name Morton is after a cousin, Morton Heinisch, who was lost serving with the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War II. The bomber he was serving on did not return from a mission on December 15th, 1941. It was a daytime mission over the French coast of the English Channel. I have only recently learned the actual date and that it was his first mission. He had not yet turned 22. Can you, Rabbi, please let me know what is the Hebrew date of his death so that I know when to say Kaddish for him?" After some quick research, it was revealed that December 15th, 1941 was the 25th day of Kislev in the year 5702. The 25th of Kislev. That's the first candle of Hanukkah. It was easy to imagine that young man, a proud Canadian and a proud Jew, going out on his first mission with the RCAF on the first day of Hanukkah. Did he take heart by remembering the courage of Judah Maccabee? Did he call to mind the little flickering candle reflected in the window back home in Canada? As he climbed aboard that bomber plane, did he see himself as one small light against the endless darkness of his day? After the war, when the millions who were lost were counted up on both sides, and the totality of the devastation to an entire generation was better understood, and the clarity of the necessity for that war had not yet been dimmed But the existential questions about life's purpose on earth did come into view. A young Marion Bloch was a freshman at Ohio's Oberlin College in 1951. She wrote to Professor Albert Einstein at Princeton, and she asked him simply, "Why are we alive?" Years later, Marion told her son David about the impetus for that letter. She says, "We were having one war after another. First, we had the First World War, then the Second, and I just couldn't see any point to the whole thing. So I wrote Einstein a letter, and I asked him, what's the point of living with all that we're going through?" And Einstein wrote back a short and exquisite letter. April 28th, 1951. Dear Miss Bloch, the question why in the human sphere is easy to answer. To create satisfaction for ourselves and for other people. In the extra-human sphere, the question has no meaning. Also, the belief in God is no way out for this question, for one can simply ask, why God? Sincerely yours, Albert Einstein. Our Torah portion expands on Marion's question. Why are we alive? What is the purpose of our lives? How do we discover a life of meaning as God intends for us? In Noah's generation, God sees wickedness and violence flooding the earth and sends a deluge to wipe the slate clean and to begin all over again. In Abraham's generation, God sees the wickedness of the twin cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, emblems of greed and xenophobia, everyday callousness and cruelty. When not even 10 righteous could be found there, God destroyed the cities and sets out to create an antidote through Abraham. God says, "I have singled him out that he may instruct his children and his household to keep, to preserve, to protect the way of the eternal God by doing what is just and right. V'shamru derech Adonai la'asot tzedakah u'mishpat." By reading the first 19 chapters of Genesis, we may be easily led to believe that the whole world is divided simply and starkly between good guys and bad guys, between light and darkness, between day and night. But our parsha includes chapters 20 and 21 and 22. These are evidence that there is often more to it than that. It's often more complicated than that. I admit it's been for me an emotional roller coaster this week, watching the US election unfold. I admit I am brokenhearted, devastated to know that so many millions and millions of Americans, after years of observing what President Trump is capable of, what he can say, what he can tweet, what he can do, how can they think that he is good or good enough? And while there are not good people on both sides of Charlottesville, that summer I remember, there are good people in blue states and in red states. I am sure of that. As we're watching CNN on election night, my oldest son asked Adam and me, "Why did good people vote for Trump?" And I admit I didn't know how to answer the question. I refused to write off millions of Americans as bad or easily fooled. They aren't. They're good. And they're smart. There's got to be more to it. It's tempting, I know, to make those clean lines between day and night, light and darkness, but it is not so. As we sift through the news of the day, we put people and whole neighborhoods and even entire countries into categories, good guys and bad guys. It's probably a survival mechanism, I imagine. Over millennia, we've developed this heightened ability to recognize cruelty on the rise. We Jews are said to be the canary in the coal mine, the conscience of humanity, the fence for the world. When we sense something is wrong, it often is wrong, but not always. Not every fear is fact. And Abraham learns this the hard way. When Abraham and Sarah approach the border to Gerar, a strange territory where they feel themselves to be strangers, they are seen to be strangers, just as they had been in Egypt, Abraham presumes he is entering into another godless place. He falls back on the "she's my sister" gambit, which saved him from Pharaoh in Egypt, but here he misjudges Avimelech and the entire kingdom of Gerar. Abraham's sixth sense of who's a good guy and who's a bad guy, that sixth sense was in overdrive, and his cynicism got the best of him, and it did more harm than good. When Avimelech confronts Abraham asking, "Why did you do this to me?" Abraham answers, "I thought there was no fear of God at all in this place. Rak ein yirat Elohim makom hazeh." But Avimelech's very name means my Father, my God, is ruler. Verses 3, 6, and 7 reveal that he is indeed God-fearing and is deserving of God's attention. So Abraham learns the hard way that it isn't black and white, that people are good, and that we should be trusting and give the benefit of the doubt. It is a dangerous world today. There is corruption and callousness and crime. Yet most people are good, even under duress. Most people are God-fearing. And so we must be on guard, but never cynical. Throughout the chapters of Genesis, God is testing Abraham with 10 trials, our sages teach. God is training Abraham in the ways of justice, and Abraham knows it. Like a soldier, he dons the armor of a guardian of justice and right, tzedakah umishpat, and he can feel himself growing stronger and more courageous. He grows stronger in his faith. He grows more confident in his faith, not only in God, but also in humanity. Stronger in the clarity that humanity is capable of rising and falling and learning from mistakes, getting up again and repenting. Chapter 20 concludes with Abraham actually praying for Avimelech. He recognizes that Abraham himself alone is responsible for bringing the guilt upon Avimelech and his kingdom, because he was so quick to judge. By the time he reaches Sodom, our patriarch is ready to defend all of its inhabitants, to reinforce the righteous among them. "Far be it from you, O God," he says. "Far be it from you to sweep away the righteous together with the wicked." Because the lines are not so clear. They share a society. They depend on one another to make a civilization. Taken together, these chapters come to teach that God is the true judge. God on high only knows, while our task is to defend the best of humanity. Like Abraham, our mission is to trust that there is always good to be found. To believe otherwise, it seems, is an affront to God, who is the Yotzer Ha'adam, the sculptor of humankind. I'll conclude with one more letter. In 1973, a Mr. Nadeau sent a distressed letter to the beloved author E.B. White, lamenting that he had lost faith in humanity. At the age of 74, E.B. White had seen a lot of life, a lot of good guys and bad guys. And so he took it upon himself to write the following, a brief and beautiful letter affirming that this God-given life does have meaning and that humanity can grow. March 30th, 1973, Dear Mr. Nadeau, as long as there is one upright man, as long as there is one compassionate woman, the contagion may spread and the scene is not desolate. Hope is the thing that is left to us in a bad time. I shall get up Sunday morning and wind the clock as a contribution to order and steadfastness. Sailors have an expression about the weather. They say, the weather is a great bluffer. I guess the same is true about our human society. Things can look dark. Then a break shows in the clouds and all is changed, sometimes rather suddenly. It is quite obvious that the human race has made a queer mess of life on this planet. But as a people, we probably harbor seeds of goodness that have lain for a long time waiting to sprout when the conditions are right. Man's curiosity, relentlessness, inventiveness, ingenuity have led him into deep trouble. We can only hope that these same traits will enable him to claw his way out. Hang on to your hat, hang on to your hope, and wind the clock, for tomorrow is another day. Sincerely, E.B. White. So I'll conclude with these blessed words from the Old Union Prayer Book. We've retained them in our own prayer book for today. Many of you know these words by heart. On this day, on this Shabbat, we ask for God's blessing of peace. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace. And give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country, that it may always be a stronghold of peace and its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within its borders, health and happiness within its homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship among the inhabitants of all lands, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavarech et amo Yisrael, bashalom.